त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनशृण्वन्नोतिभिः सेदसादनम् श्रीमहागणाधिपतये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। नारद उवाच अथ दैत्यसुताः सर्वे श्रुत्वा तदनुवर्णितम् जगृहुर्निरवद्यत्वान्नैव गुरुवनुशिक्षितम्। अथाचार्यसुतस्तेषां बुद्धिमेकान्तसंस्थिताम्। You may say अथाचार्यसुतस्तेषां बुद्धिमेकान्तसंस्थिताम् आलक्ष्य भीतस्त्वरितः राज्ञा आवेदयद्यथा। See, Prahlada's mind, buddhi, ekanta samsthitam, it was firmly established in Ishvara. So, Ishvara is called ekanta, or his mind is fixed on one goal, ekanta samsthitam. So, generally, in life, we are very active. In fact, we are hyperactive. We perform more actions than really needed. And sometimes we do not know how to sit quiet. That quietude is something which we are not accustomed to. Therefore, we get up and invent something or the other to do and go on doing it. Always looking for something or the other to do. So this is what is called karmasakti, the attachment to activity. Become attached to activity. This is one very big problem. When people become old, so their mind doesn't grow. The body becomes old. And now mind doesn't grow. So mind doesn't move from karma to jnana. Mind remains in karma, hyperactivity. But body doesn't grow. Body becomes old. Already there is a gulf between the body and mind. Mind runs at a speed of 100 miles per hour, whereas body can run only at a speed of 10 miles per hour. That kind of 1:10 ratio gulf is there between the body and mind. And as the person becomes old, the mind continues to be hyperactive because of the attachment to karma and attachment to the samsara, the desires and all that, whereas body becomes old. This is the single important cause of unhappiness of the old people. Because when the body becomes senile, unable to move as well as it was doing at one time, but the mind is active. Body cannot move. Mind is just jumping around. And so he will not find any peace. And then the old person who is having a lot of karma sakti, he looks around and the people jumping around and then so very active, etc. Sometimes his own children and sometimes everybody else, they are all active. Therefore, there is always this sense of comparison. People are accustomed to compare themselves with others, and therefore he becomes jealous. Under this jealousy, he doesn't know that it is jealousy. This jealousy always comes out in the shape of some complaint or the other. When I was the manager, when I was in service, when I was earning, or when I was running the home, a house, so things were different. Whereas now, because I am not running the show, so they neglect me, they ignore me. Like that he will be complaining. Because of the karma sakti, the entire problem is that of karma sakti. So when we are healthy and still we are able to work well, we should get rid of this karma sakti. So that whatever activity is there in our life, it is entirely by understanding, jnatva karmani kurveta, not by the pressure of attachment to karma. Anyway, I suppose you have appreciated the point that I was trying to make. So, buddhim ekanta samsthitam. So, we are very active in life. That is where I started and went in a particular direction. So, now I am back again. We are active in life, but these activities, multiple activities, the human beings do not seem to have a goal. They do not seem to have a goal worth mentioning. Accumulating wealth is not a worthy goal at all. And then the accumulation of pleasures is also not a goal. Then doing some punyam here and there and securing the heaven after death is also not the worthy goal. There is only one goal worth pursuing, only one goal. All other things can remain in their place. They cannot be goals. They are there incidental. They are incidental to life. They are not the goal of life. Goal of life is only one and only one thing, and that is knowing oneself. That is the goal of life. Very simple. You have to know what you are. Before the body falls, you have to know what you are. That is the goal of life. And which is same as the motiveless devotion to Ishvara. Motiveless devotion to Ishvara, Nishkama Bhakti, and the pursuit of self-knowledge. They seem to be two different pursuits, but they are not. They are just one and the same. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the example of two trees which appear separate, different at the ground level. They appear different at the ground level. But when you look up at the level of the canopy, they merge. You cannot say from above, you cannot separate the two trees. In fact, both trees together make a single canopy. In fact, the entire forest has one single canopy. Whereas on the ground, the two trees appear different. The bhakti and the jnana are like that. At the initial or preliminary stages, they seem to be different. In bhakti, you worship God. In jnana, you discern between the body and the atma, the mind and the atma. You see how different they appear? But gradually, as you discern between the body, mind and the atman, and also at the same time you practice motiveless devotion to Ishvara, a merger will happen. What you are trying to know, the self, happens to be none other than the divinity itself. That is how the merger will happen. Therefore, that is the goal. Call it bhakti, call it jnana. That is the goal. That is the only goal. And Prahlada's mind is set on that goal. Ekanta samsthita. And now it is interesting to see that all the other kids also are going in the same direction. Their mind is also now set on the same goal. They are all becoming like Prahlada. And these two teachers, they noticed that these kids are not studying what they teach. They are influenced and inspired by Prahlada to such an extent that they are all becoming gradually the devotees of Ishvara. So devotion to Ishvara is banned. It is against the laws of the state. You cannot practice devotion to Ishvara. You are liable to be arrested and prosecuted if you practice devotion to Ishvara. That is what Hiranyakashipu is. And so we have some such governments in the world. We have seen some of them. At present, I don't know what kind of governments there are. There may be still such governments. But at one time, practice of religion is an offense. That kind of countries we had. So that is what Hiranyakashipu is. And therefore, these two teachers, they live by taking salary from Hiranyakashipu. They are appointed by him, and so they have to remain obedient to him. And so they ran to him because they don't want to be blamed by Hiranyakashipu. Last time Hiranyakashipu tried to blame them. And they told, if you remember this story, they told, don't try to blame us. We are trying to do our duty. If you have to blame, you blame your son. But now it is not Hiranyakashipu's son alone. The entire class is becoming the devotees of Ishvara. And therefore, the teacher, the head teacher, headmaster, he was frightened and he ran to the king and told him, "Dear sir, I am informing you before you find, I am telling from my side, Prahlada and other boys, they are not following our teaching. They have become very serious devotees of Ishvara." That is very unhappy news for Prahlada. Shrutva tadapriyam daityaha dussaham tanayanayam kopavesha chaladgatraha putram hantum manodadhe. So that was a very unhappy news for Hiranyakashipu, Apriyam. You know why? Daitya. He is the son of Diti. Diti is Dvaitam, duality. And Aditi is Advaitam. The children of Aditi are Devatas, means wise people. The children of Diti are Asuras, means people who are very worldly, very arrogant, and so they are very egoic. So he is the Daitya. And this Daitya, you see, this person of big ego becomes the king. Even without any power, he is very egoic and very painful person, very troublesome person. But if that person becomes the king, now you can imagine. So he cannot tolerate dussaham, what? Anayam, insubordination. He cannot tolerate. That too coming from Tanaya, his own son. Impossible to tolerate the insubordination from the son. This Asura is present. Asura means demon. This guy, demon, is present in our hearts, in some corner, lingering in our hearts always. So we have to check whether this Asura is still lingering. That is the purpose of these Puranas. Kopa Vesha Chalat Gatraha. Now his body was shaking. Chalat Gatraha. Because he is possessed by anger. Kopa Avesha. See, this anger has a momentum. Shri Krishna talks of the momentum of the anger. Kopa Vega. Kama Krodhodbhavam Vegam. The momentum is there. So anger, it begins like a simple thought and then it acquires momentum. And when now you are angry, that anger, which is still a thought, it is nothing more than a thought, but this thought of anger, as it acquires momentum, means it builds up upon itself. It builds upon itself. And then it has a peculiar energy. The krodha is like that. Even desire is like that. That's why they say kama vesha or kama vega, the momentum of desire, the momentum of anger. They are very dangerous. And so, when a person is possessed by anger, the entire physiology is affected, very deeply affected. There is a shake in the body because of that anger, the momentum of the anger. Eyes become ruddy. Anger is like that. And in fact, these are outward changes. Inwardly also many changes happen. The heartbeat goes up and adrenaline is pumped into the blood in good amounts. So suddenly the entire blood biochemistry changes. And you see, when a person is angry, you have to do 2-3 things to him. You cannot do. It will be nice if we can do. One, take his blood pressure. You cannot do it, But if you do it, you can tell him, you can put some sense into him. And then take a sample of his blood so that you can measure his blood sugar. His blood sugar will be very high at the time of anger. Blood sugar and adrenaline also must be a way to find out how much adrenaline or norepinephrine, such hormones are there, So how much are present? They are not present normally. But now the blood will have them. And the sugar. So blood sugar, because energy has to be released in good amount, in a very short time, lot of energy has to be released. And when the person is angry, the digestion, which is a 24/7 process, comes to a halt. It doesn't happen anymore. It will halt. And when the person becomes normal, again it picks up. And the entire nervous system is put on high energy state, like a taut string or wire. It becomes like that nervous system. So these are all the changes outwardly and also inwardly. The speech becomes blurred. So this is how it is like a demon has possessed the guy. Bhutavesha, Kamavesha and Krodhavesha, these are all similar. And so Kopavesha Jalatgatraha. Now he is the king, The king means in the monarchy, he is the judge and he is the prosecutor and he is the executor. Everything is he. So he prosecutes the guy, he establishes the crime and he convicts him and then he punishes him. And then he surrenders him to the executioner. He hands him over to the executioner. Everything is the king only. That is how the monarchies happen. When the king is the right man, proper person, there is no issue. But when the king is like this, so his decisions are bound to be faulty. Anyway, putram hantum manodadhe. He decided, keep aside this love of the son and all that. He is violating the law of the land. He is violating the basic decrees passed by Hiranyakashipu, very fundamental decree, very important decree, namely, Sri Hari should not be worshipped in his kingdom. And he cannot allow violation of that rule to happen in his own palace. That is not possible. So he has to prove that he is a very firm ruler who does not care for these relationships and all that. This is the dictator. The anger, the dictatorship, the ego, they create such a ambience in the mind that the love of son is set aside. So he decided to give a capital punishment to Prahlada. Kshiptva purushaya vacha Prahlada matadarhanam. So there you may find Prahrada, Ra rather than La. One and the same. Ralayo rabhedaha. There is no difference between the two. Ahe kshamanah papena tirashchinena chakshusha. So now he is speaking to Prahlada in very harsh tones. In fact, already he has thrown at him a few abusive words. So, and then Prahlada is such a great devotee, and he is a jnani. Prahlada is a jnani. So, he doesn't deserve such a tone, he doesn't deserve such treatment, he doesn't deserve such abuse. But still, Hiranyakashipu he is not in a mood to understand the truth. Therefore, he ill-treats Prahlada to the worst extent. And now he is looking at Prahlada with a look which is very wicked look, wicked eye. He is looking at him and also very crooked eye. Teraschinena. He is not looking at Prahlada directly in the face. He is looking at him from an angle like that. So, a sideways glance. So, something like that. The sideways glance has many contexts. It has the context of love also, but here the context is that of anger. So, teraschinena chakshusha. Maybe it is crooked eye. He says crooked eye, not the sideways. So let me stay with crooked. So sideways you keep it aside. So he looked at him with such a look, and then prashraya vanatam dantam baddhanjali mavasthitam sarpah padahata iva Shvasan Prakriti Darunaha. So now for a change some story is moving forward. We had 8 days of Vedanta and one little story which is nice. And even the story has its own beauty because it's very symbolic. So the story is somehow, it shows some of our characters in mirror. The story acts like a mirror. And that mirror, it captures the image of our own character to some extent, here and there. Possible. Because there is an asura sitting in everybody. And so the story brings out that asura, which is nice. So now we know, this is the anger that we have. So in anger, we are compared to Hiranyakashipu. So we don't want to be like Hiranyakashipu. So good, when you look at the face in the mirror, it helps to know how the face looks like. Very nice. Anyway, even as Hiranyakashipu was furious and he is very reproachful, then Prahlada is not trying to defend himself. You see, when the other person throws a blame at you and he is angry, he is speaking angrily to you, and you smile, and you do not defend yourself, then the other person's anger becomes doubled. If you react, then he finds some justification for his anger, and therefore he remains at ease. He will be still angry, but anger will not grow. It will remain where it is, and it may come down also. But when you do not react, on the other hand, you just accept it with love, with a smile. So prashraya avanatam. Prahlada looks at Hiranyakashipu as the father and the king who has to be respected, whatever may be his behavior. So he is the king and father. And so Prahlada shows respect to Hiranyakashipu. He just bends his head and pays his respect. Dantam, he is very self-controlled. He is not disturbed by the abusive language used by Prahlada, by Hiranyakashipu, and very humble. Baddhanjali mavasthitam, he stood like this, accepting all the vituperative language that is thrown at him. He just accepts all that. Acceptance. Because that is how a jnani is. A jnani is not perturbed by things that people say, even on his face. So he smiles. And Prahlada was like that. That is the jnana. That means, you see, there is no need to get hurt. People talk of hurt. What hurt do you mean? You feel hurt shows that you are ignorant. You have not known the truth. People, you see, people in their ignorance, first they feel hurt. Second, they justify their hurt. Sometimes a piece of nice advice will not be received in the proper sense. Suppose somebody is hurt, and I tell him, what do you mean by hurt? You can forgive that person and keep quiet. Don't be hurt. he thinks that I am supporting him. I am not supporting him. He is not my brother-in-law or any such thing. I am not supporting anybody. I don't even know him. I am giving you a nice piece of advice. No, how can you advise me like that? Okay, I understand. Okay. Now what do you want to do? What to do about this hurt? You tell me. You tell me what do you want to do. You want to file a writ petition against him? Go and do it. And face the music. Up to you. You want to remain in samsara, how can I stop? But if you want to come out of samsara, I tell you, there is nobody to be hurt. Nayam hanti nahanyate. Suna nahi Gita mein? Just people recite Gita. They go on reciting for years together. No value for that. Nayam hanti nahanyate. Very beginning. You see it in the very beginning. This Atma, Nayam hanti, it doesn't kill, nor does it get killed. Atma it doesn't get killed. It doesn't kill. It doesn't kill means it is not the actor. It is akarta. It doesn't get killed means it is not the bhokta, abhokta. That is what Atma is. Anyway, so the sense of hurt is entirely an imagination of the mind. You imagine that he has hurt you. There is a thing called ego, which is also called abhimana. You have a very ignorant identification with the body-mind, and then further identification with a status, this and that, and that creates an ego. And somebody says something against that ego. So you should be happy that he had said something against that ego, because that ego you are not. You can join hands with him and say the same thing against the ego yourself. Because ego is not worth supporting, worth identifying with. It is not. Anyway, so Hiranyakashipu is the egoic person. Prahlada is not. Hiranyakashipu gets hurt by Prahlada without Prahlada's doing anything. Whereas in spite of very bad behavior on the part of Hiranyakashipu, Prahlada is not hurt. So he remains very polite and humble. When he saw Prahlada that way, without any reaction, so Hiranyakashipu's anger became doubled. He is now like a serpent on which you step. Padahataha sarpaha iva. Generally this serpent, particularly this serpent is that example. It is very angry by very nature, serpent. That is how the example has to be taken. It is not the biology of serpents and all that. Just in the poetry, that is the example. Serpent is a very vicious creature. It is a poisonous creature and it can bite, and thereby it can kill the person. So that is its nature, and it is by nature very angry, ready to bite any moment. And now, without your doing any harm to it, it will bite. Now you go and step on it, now will it spare you? No. So that is how Hiranyakashipu was. Shvasan prakruti darunaha. Because of the anger, he is making a hissing sound, like that hissing sound because of the anger. The breathing became very labored because of the anger. Shvasan. And also by very nature, he is very cruel person. By very nature, he is cruel. Like Kamsa. Kamsa is a very cruel guy. So, if you give him half a chance, the cruelty will come out. Whereas now he is angry. So, he turns out to be very cruel in his treatment of Prahlada. He durvinita mandatman kula bheda karadhama stabdham machhasanodbhutam neshyetvadyayam. So So he is addressing Prahlada not as son anymore. Now Prahlada is the enemy, not as son anymore. Like Ravana looks at Vibhishana as the enemy, not as son. So Duryodhana looks at Dharmaraja not as a brother and friend, but looks at him as enemy. So this is the vicious person's attitude. He sees enemy where there is no enemy. That is the problem. So he Durvinita. Prahlada was very polite. But he says, oh arrogant guy. You see, when you misinterpret the politeness, it appears as arrogance. Suppose the other person doesn't speak and he is silent. You can say, oh, he is a very arrogant person. That's why he doesn't speak. Suppose he bends his head. You see how arrogant he is? He doesn't want to look at us. That is how. He thinks very great of himself. That's why he doesn't even look at us. That is how. So Prahlada was very polite and humble, and that politeness and humbleness is interpreted by Hiranyakashipu as arrogance of the very bad kind, Durvinita. In fact, his thinking would be probably, he is very humble and polite standing there, but he doesn't follow what I say. Therefore it makes him feel that Prahlada is very arrogant. He Durvinita. And then Mandatman, he thinks that Prahlada is a dumb guy. Why? Why dumb? Yeah, he worships Lord and he doesn't have any desires and he is not hurt, he doesn't react. Therefore he must be dumb. Whereas an intelligent young man should be ambitious, competitive, very progressive and easily hurt and reacting. This is how society wants people to live. This is what is called social morality. Social morality is no morality at all. It wants you to be ambitious. What kind of morality it is? It wants you to be competitive. It wants you to pursue wealth and pleasures, society and family. So that Hiranyakashipu, his morality, it is a nice illustration for the social morality. So social morality has its origin in ignorance. Whereas real morality is you do not compare with anybody. You are not ambitious at all. You are not competitive at all. And you are not hurt. You do not react. You are always loving and compassionate. That is the real morality. Therefore, the correct understanding of one's self and its effect on the activities of the person. So such a person like Prahlada is looked upon by the society as a dumb guy, very dull person. He is silent, so dull. Silent means dull. Doesn't speak much, dull. Or maybe may not be knowing much. So he doesn't know how to express himself. All such. So Mandatman. Kula Bhedakara Adhama. You see, Kula is family. And so Prahlada is expected to toe the family line. Hiranyakashipu's line. He is expected to toe that line. So Hiranyakashipu hates Srihari. Therefore Prahlada is supposed to follow suit. And Hiranyakashipu doesn't worship God at all. He is an atheist. Therefore Prahlada, being an obedient son of Hiranyakashipu, should also become a theist. You see, a Mahatma said, follow the path of the truth. Always search for the truth. Pursue truth in life. And if a father comes in the way, renounce the father like Prahlada did. If brother comes in the way, renounce the brother like Vibhishana did. And so like that a few more examples are there. Like that. If husband comes in the way, renounce the husband like Mirabai did. Like that there are a few more examples. They say like that. So Prahlada is like that. He knows the truth and he is on the path of the truth. And if Hiranyakashipu is not willing to follow the truth, then Hiranyakashipu can go his way. Prahlada would not change his way. Therefore, Prahlada is seen as one who creates a rift in the family. Kula Bhedakara, Adhama, or wretched guy. And so you are very arrogant, obstinate, intransigent, stabdham. And then you violate my command. So today I am proclaiming the punishment. You are to be killed. Neshyet vadya yamakshayam. Krodhasya yasya kampante trayo lokas saheshvaraha tasya me bhitavan mudha shasanam kim balotyagaha. When I am angry, when I become angry, all the people of the world shake with fear. That is my power. When I am angry, nobody can stand before my anger. They are afraid of my anger. All the people of this world. Not only this world, all the three worlds. Trayo loka. Hiranyakashipu is a Puranic story. In the story of the Purana, the demon, the villain, is always feared by Devatas also. Indra, Varuna, etc. are afraid of him. That is how the Purana is. It is something like in the society also, good people, they are afraid of this villain. And they don't want to have any confrontation with him. All good people keep away from him. And they are afraid of him. That is the meaning of that. Indra, Varuna, Devatas are afraid of Hiranyakashipu, means this is how they are afraid. They don't want to have a quarrel with him. And he thinks that he is supreme because of that. All the people are keeping away from him without picking up a quarrel, and therefore he thinks that all are afraid of him. And therefore he is great. I am such a great person, tasya me. And now you violate my command, my order, my decree, you violate it, atyagaha. What is your strength? Based on what strength or power? What power? You violated my command. What is your support? So, because generally when you are violating an order, you must have some support behind. Then only you can violate. If you are standing alone, you won't violate any order. So Hiranyakashipu got a doubt that somebody is supporting him, that's why he is violating the order of the king. Prahlada uvacha. So now Prahlada is replying. Once again we have come back to Prahlada's vakyas. Whatever Prahlada says is replete with wisdom. That is the idea of the taking a story for study. Na kevalam me bhavatascha rajan savai balam balinam chaparesham pare vare mi sthira jangamaye brahmadayo yena vasham pranitaha. Already Prahlada has renounced Hiranyakashipu as father, because now Hiranyakashipu is not father. He is the judge, prosecutor, he is the judge, and he is the executioner, all in one. Therefore he addresses him as Rajan, O king. Now it is a subject versus the king. No more father-son relationship. Hey Rajan, so the question is, Kim Balaha? What is the power behind you? That is the question of Hiranyakashipu. And so he is replying, it is not only the power behind me, na kevalam me balam. It is also the power that keeps you what you are. You have power, and the power that is behind you, and the power behind me, and also the power behind all powerful people in this world. It is the same power. So don't think that you are having one kind of power and another kind of power is behind me. There is a power behind me, but it happens to be the same power that is behind you, the power of all powerful people in this world. Not only that, you look at the life forms, sthira jangama. So the plants have power of life that makes them grow. They are sthira. Jangama, the birds, the animals, the small and big creatures, humans, all kinds of life forms that move around, including the fish, and then water, the living life forms living underneath the water. All these life forms, sthira jangama, and pare avare. Pare big, avare small. In the ocean, a small fish, a big shark. In the birds, a tiny bird, the big vulture. Among animals, a silly deer, a big animal like a hippo or an elephant or a tiger, all small and big. So all these life forms. Then the devatas, Brahmadeva, Indra, Varuna, all of them are supported by the same power. That is the power that keeps me standing before you. And the entire humanity is kept in check, in place by that power. So, you see, the power that makes the fire burn, the power that makes the water flow, it is the same power that makes the seeds sprout. We think they are different powers. We think the power of a waterfall like Niagara, it's a great power. You can see that. The majesty of the power of Niagara Falls. Probably this electricity came from there only, I suppose. Because the Niagara is the world's biggest hydroelectric project. And Canada and America, they are blessed by that river. And so they share the power equally, 50-50. And probably that is what is here. And I see big power lines close to our Vishnu temple. I have a feeling that they run all the way parallel to 407, etc. To Niagara, they must be. I think so. So that is the power of Niagara. And then a seed sprouts, a power. Do you think the power of the seed is small? Less? No. When the seed sprouts, its power is tremendous. So much so, the sprouting seed can break the concrete apart. You must be seeing it all the time. That is the power of the seed. Concrete cannot stand before that power. It breaks and the seed sprouts. That is the power of the seed. And so the power that makes the seeds sprout and the trees grow, the power that makes the birds fly, the power that makes the humans speak and think, the power that makes you abuse me, the power that makes me answer you, same power. There are not so many powers. It appears different to you because of your ignorance. There is no difference. It is the same power. That's why Nayam hanti nahanyate. When the other person says something to you, you should not hate him. You should love him still. You know why? Because the power that makes him speak, makes him act, is the same power that makes your heart beat. The same power. The rest is all upadhi. So there is no enemy at all. Anyway, that is the reply that is given by Prahlada. You see, there is an unknown power. You cannot know the power. It is the universal power. You can describe it in a few words, but you cannot know it. It is infinite. How can you know? Its effects you can see. It is the unknown power that acts. And we imagine that we are acting. You are not acting. The unknown power is acting. You see, I tell you, the spirit of what Prahlada says, he talks about the power, because Hiranyakashipu brought the topic of power. Because Hiranyakashipu was blind with power. That is his problem. He cannot see the truth, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power makes the people blind. They do not appreciate their strength, their weakness. They cannot see the higher power that runs our lives. Because when power makes us blind, so when we become arrogant, for whatever reason, maybe you have studied big things and big university degrees you have accomplished, therefore one becomes arrogant. One makes a lot of money and therefore he becomes arrogant. So, whatever is the reason, when people become blind with power, so they cannot understand the glory of that unknown power. They cannot see. They think that they are acting, they are accomplishing. They fail to see that that unknown power alone acts. And we, in our ignorance, imagine that we are acting. I tell you one thing, you please give a thought to it. We are like patients under anesthetics. When a surgeon performs surgery upon us, that is how we are. We are utterly helpless. The patient under anesthetics, submitted to the knife of the surgeon, what power he has? He has no power. And we are no different. And so the patient, when he wakes up, he finds that the operation was over, the surgery was over. So our life is more or less the same. We think we are controlling our life, we are allowing things to happen and all that. We imagine like that. So we assume that we have some command, some control, some more or less. If the person is very arrogant, he thinks he is controlling everything. He is less arrogant, he thinks that he is controlling a few things. But the fact is, you are not controlling anything. You are like a patient under the surgeon's knife, given anesthetics. And so the patient is helpless. We are the same in life. And when the surgery was over, can you say you have done something? You have accomplished something? Can you say that? You cannot say that, because you have not accomplished anything. When the marriage was over, you think you have accomplished something. When the children grow, you think that you have accomplished that. It is like the patient telling, I have accomplished the surgery. He has not accomplished any surgery. He doesn't have any say in the matter. So you may wonder, in the first place, the patient gave consent and he submitted to the surgery. I tell you, there also the patient does not have his control, because he is under the pressure on one side from the illness and on the other side from family and physicians. And so once you visit a hospital and present yourself to a doctor, Now you think you are calling the shots. You are not calling any shots. They call the shots. You think you are gulping the tablet. You are not gulping the tablet. They make you gulp the tablet. You think you are giving consent for surgery. You are not giving consent for surgery. They make you sign on the dotted line and you sign it and do namaskar. You think you have a choice in undergoing surgery. At least to that extent I am controlling things. No. You are not controlling that also, because you are under the immense pressure of illness on one side and the medical establishment on the other, family on the third side. So, a person came to me, should I go for bypass surgery, Swamiji? Why? What is your problem? Why do you want bypass surgery? What will you do with bypass surgery? Why not live happily, comfortably as long as you live? No, there is so much pressure from the family. Then I thought, oh, this is how things operate. So you think you have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have an illusion of a choice. That is what you have. That power, it drives our lives. And in our folly, in our ignorance, we assume that we are calling shots, we are dictating things, we are accomplishing things. We are not accomplishing anything. And it takes a lot of wisdom and a humble heart and that inner silence, a lot of understanding to know that you, the body-identified ego, has not in command of anything whatsoever. Know that it requires a lot of wisdom. You may not be able to know in the rush of the youth or wealth or whatever. So Prahlada says, don't you bother about the power behind me. You look at the power behind you. It is the same power. What is that power? Sa Ishvarah Kalaha Urukramo Ojas Sahasattva Balendriyatma Sa eva Vishwam Paramasva Shaktibhihi Srujatyavatyatti Gunatrayeshaha. So what is that power? We give a name to it, Ishvaraha. Sa Ishvaraha. He is the Ishvara. The power of time. The power of time is infinite. It brings to life what did not exist earlier, and it devours everything that existed for a while. The power of time is immense, it is. And Ishvara is in the form of time. You see, this story you must have noticed. Ravanasura was the greatest of the villains, and so they are suffering because of his misdeeds. And then all the devatas, they rush to Vishnu. Hey Vishnu, please come, take incarnation and kill this Ravana. Then he says, okay, I will do that. So you go back and I will take birth in Ayodhya, and then eventually I will kill Ravana. So these devatas, they say, why not now? No, you don't know, you go home. You know why? It is the time which will kill Ravana. And Ishvara will kill Ravana in the form of time. So the time has to come. And so Ravana has to, his evil should go further up and up. Unless it goes up in time, it cannot fall in time. Everything happens in time. So that is the meaning of taking birth and growing. He has to take birth and then he has to grow and become young and then go to the forest. That means a lot of time is required to annihilate, to destroy this Ravana. That is the meaning of it. It is the power of time. You see, I will give you another example. You sow the seeds in a farm, and then you think that you get the harvest or the crop because of the good seeds, the fertilizers, and the other things that you put, and the soil. All these things put together will give us a good crop. That is what we think. But you forget one thing. You get the crop given by time. Kala will give you the crop. All these things are there, but Kala is the main thing. Even if you have all of them, without the input of Kala, you won't get the crop. It is the input of Kala that gives you crop. It is the input of Kala that gives a child to the mother. It is all Kala. That is Ishvara. And that is the power of Ishvara. If he wants to uplift somebody, in the form of Kala he will uplift. If he wants to destroy somebody, in the form of Kala he will destroy. It is the Kala time. Urukramaha, Ishvara, he is a very powerful guy. He walks with big strides. Powerful guy means walks with big strides. This is again the Vamanavatara hint it is, Urukrama. He has big steps. So, Urukramoso. Urukramaha means in one step he measures Bhuloka. In the second step he measures Bhuvarloka. The third step he measures Suvarloka. Maybe that is not the story. The story is Ihaloka, Paraloka. Make it 2 lokas. Then the story will fit. So he measures the Ihaloka with one step and measures the Paraloka with another step. Now it is over. Brahmanda is covered. Still a third step is pending. These are the steps of Ishvara. Urukramaha means he has infinite power. That is the meaning of that story. And that Ishvara, he is in you. He is the power in you. He is the infinite power of the universe, and he is the power in you. Ishvara is the power in the sun. In the sun's core, fusion is taking place. Billions of hydrogen bombs are exploding in the sun's core every second. That is the power of the sun. And the same power, not a different power, the same power is in you. It is something like the power at the Niagara hydroelectric station is here. That is 10,000 volts or 100,000 volts energy. Here it is 120 volts, but still the same power. Why it is small? It is not the power which is small. It is the upadhi which is small. If that 10,000 volts come into this, thank God it is small. So it is the same power which is burning in the sun and stars, and also which makes your heart pump the blood. Ojas sahas sattva balendriyatma. So all powers, ojaha, sahaha, sattva, bala, indriyatma. Some small difference between all of them. So the translator will help us. So instead of my predicting it and then checking it in one go. So ojaha is the physical power, sahaha the mental power, and then sattva is the courage, bala is the physical strength. We already said physical power, so that you make it the power of the organs, so that you have the physical power reserved for bala. And courage. Courage is also power. Indriya, the sense organs and organs of action, they have power. There is power in speech, and there is power in hands, in legs, etc. So all these powers are of Ishvara, the same Ishvara. Sa eva vishvam paramaha svashaktibhihi. Ishvara's powers are multifaceted. And so, with his multifaceted power, he creates this universe. The Big Bang arises from the power of Ishvara. And then the stars are formed, and then galaxies are formed, and around one star there is a planetary system, and on one of the planets there is life, and all that is created by Ishvara. He is the creator, Srijati. And Avati, he protects. Protection means every life form is given food on earth. Don't talk about somebody getting less food, somebody getting more food. That is not the point here. We are talking of the universal power, So 7 billion people are getting food, plus or minus 2 or 3, don't worry. Don't go into that track. That is a different track. So that is the power. He protects and then he destroys. That is the power. There is power in creation, power in protection and sustenance, and power in destruction. Same power. The power that creates, it is the same power that destroys. It is not a different power. Same power. And so, you see, when there is a forest fire, it is the forest fire which destroys the forest. But then it is the same fire that initiates a fresh forest. Unless the fire is there is no new forest. They know. The forest people know it. Therefore, forest fires, they destroy and also they create. Like that everywhere. A child is born, that is the power of Ishvara, power of time. An old man has died at the same time. Power of Ishvara, power of time. So, Swashakti-bhihi, multifaceted power. Like the Taittiriya Upanishad is known to you, Bheshasmad Vatah Pavate. It is the power of Ishvara which makes the winds blow. Bheshodeti Suryaha, which makes the sun rise and set. Bheshasmad Agnischendrascha, it is the power that makes the fire burn. Indra, the god of rains, give plentiful rain. Opposites, fire burns, turns everything to ashes. Rains can make everything green. Same power. Bheshasmad Agnischendrascha Murtyurdhavati Panchama iti. The death is the same power. So, and that is the power Gunatrayeshaha. So, it is the Lord is the Ishvara, is the commander of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas. Intelligence is Sattva guna, that is the power. And Ishvara has the power of intelligence. Intelligence that you see in the entire universe is the Sattva power of Ishvara. There is intelligence in everything. In an atom there is intelligence. There is power in an atom and there is an intelligence. When you understand the structure of the atom, that is the intelligence that is inherent in the atom, you have understood. And when you explode the atom, you break it, when you break the atom, certain atoms are broken by impinging with neutrons. Nuclear power needs fuel. Nuclear fuel, you know how much fuel it will be? The electricity that is enough to supply power to New York City for year after year, the fuel will be a rod like this much rod, a dozen of them. Fuel rods, they say rods, these thick rods. All of that is not fuel. Fuel is inside those rods, a dozen of them, enough to give power to New York City for 1 year. That is the power of atoms. And power of planets going around the sun, power of sun, the fusion taking place in the core of the sun, and the stars. Stars are mega fires burning there, mega fires. And so all that power is Ishvara's power. And that power is behind you, the same power is behind me. I see it, you cannot see it. That is the only difference between Prahlada and Hiranyakashipu. Rute jitada sa eva, we have seen that. Jehya suram bhavamimam tvamatmanaha samam mano tatsvana santi vidvishaha. Rute jitadatmana pathasthitat tadhihyanantasya mahat samarhanam. Even as I read the verse, the verses of Gita rush into the context. And I generally give the verse, Gita verse, because you are all students of Gita, you will appreciate it well. So he is advising, Hey Rajan, O king, Jehi, give up. Imam asuram bhavam. This attitude of asura. Asura means wealth and pleasures. That is the asura. Type A personality. That is asura. Type A is asura. Wealth and pleasures. So what will you do with wealth? Pleasures. So once we are after pleasures, any amount of wealth is not enough. The pleasures are like that. So, suppose you have a home. Now still you make a lot of wealth. Then you can purchase a yacht. They call it yacht. The spelling is a bit funny though. It is called yacht? Very interesting. Why they call it yacht? This is something that baffles me even now. A boat. So where is the end for these pleasures? And then get worried about it. It is sitting in the ocean and you are sitting at home and get worried about it. So this is the asura. And then the asura is bound to have enemies. When you are desiring, the desire, somebody else also desires the same, and so there is a clash. A desireless person has no clash with anybody. He has no desires. Where is the clash for him? Whereas a desiring person is vulnerable for conflict. Conflict can come and sit upon him any moment. This is the asura, and therefore anger. Desire means it leads to anger. Kama eshaha, krodha eshaha. Kama and then krodha follows. That is asura now. He is the demon. So demonic attitude. So give this up. O Prahlada, O Hiranyakashipu, give up this. And samam mano dhatsva. You see, you look into your mind and make it equanimous. So, you see, Hiranyakashipu, he has an attitude of mind in which the opposites are firmly fixed. So, this is my friend and this is my enemy. This friend, enemy. They are fixed so firmly in his mind, so he looks upon Sri Hari as his enemy. So much so, nobody should even utter the name of Shri Hari. An ongoing fight, and I come to your home, and casually or unknowingly, I utter the name of that guy. Then you give a warning to me, hey Swami, you don't utter that name in this home, otherwise you will have to get out. That is the dvesha. That is the enmity, which is not well, which is wrong. People think that it is all fine. They think dividing like that into friends and foes is all justified. Amazing. I don't mind worldly people are like that. Worldly people are generally ignorant. They don't know the finer details of the truth. But at least the students of Vedanta should know that there are no friends and foes. There is only divinity. It is, you just imagine. People imagine and assume that the imagination is a truth. They sit 1,000 miles away and imagine something. These are friends and these are foes. They sit and imagine. And the ground reality, which is far removed from them, has nothing to do with their imagination. That is a different reality. Their imagination is a different reality. But this is how they create friends and foes. And so, hey Hiranyakashipu, don't split yourself into these opposites. You see, I will give you a point to think about. If you say, I love, and then if you say, I hate, you are splitting yourself into the opposites of love and hate, friend and foe. This is madness, I tell you. It is craziness that you allow such a split to happen in your heart. Don't do that mistake. So, you keep your mind equanimous. There is no friend, there is no foe. Try it, practice it. And it will take time, but a stage comes when you are established in the sameness, samatvam. Do that. Samam manodhatsva nasanti vidvishaha. There are no enemies, dear sir. There are no enemies. Nasanti vidvishaha. You imagine that there are enemies. There are no enemies. Sometimes what people do, oh, he is my adversary, he is plotting something. He is not plotting anything. He is a samsari as much as we are samsaris. And he is struggling with his samsara, with his mind and with his imagination and with his problem. That is what he is doing. He is not plotting against you. So we sit and imagine he is plotting against me, he is my adversary. There is no adversary to you. You just imagine like that. I don't know how else to explain that. You have to get the neck of it. Explanation is only this much. Na santi vidvishaha. There are no enemies. You see, a person asked me, I have a lawsuit going on in the court, and now you say na santi vidvishaha. There are no enemies. Then what is the meaning of that lawsuit? I said, go and withdraw it. Go and withdraw it and be at peace. Be at peace. So at least be wise at least now. No, I will lose money. You lose money, you lose nothing. You don't know. Paisa to kuch bhi nahi hai. You should know that. The peace of mind, the purity of heart, the sameness of understanding, that is the wealth. पैसा के लिए लड़ रहे हो भाई, पैसा तो कुछ भी नहीं है. You should give up that struggle, and if you can, you give some more money to him, bless him. Do that. So, nasanti vidvishaha. There are no enemies. You imagine enemies. There is one enemy though. Rite, accept. What is that enemy? Ajitadatmanaha upathasthitat. This is Gita. Exactly that expression. Ajitat atmanaha upathasthitat. Now I will put it in the words of Gita. Anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. This is the second. Jitatmana. Something is there. It comes in the 6th chapter, in the very beginning. So, you are your enemy. How? When you do not command your body, Atma is body, and Anatma is Ajitatma. You have to conquer your body. It is called Madhyamapadalopa Samasa for the students of Vyakaranam. So, Anatmanaha means Ajitatmanaha. One who has not conquered the body. Atma is body. You have to conquer the body. Conquer the body means what? Suppose you sit upright and then there is a lower back pain. Now yet you sit upright. That is conquering the body. The body says you sit in a sofa, but you don't sit in a sofa, you sit upright and do pranayama. That is conquering the body. Really. Body says sit and this couch potato thing it is. So sit in the couch, eat potato chips and watch TV. And then you say no, go for a walk, a brisk walk for 1 hour and come back. That is how you have to conquer the body. Body says eat more. You say no, this is light dinner only, not eating more, enough. You command it. Don't allow the body to command you. That is what is called conquering the body. You do that. If you fail to do that, that body, which is not conquered by you, will become your enemy. Very wonderful advice. Anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. Shatru is the enemy. Who is enemy? Who makes you uncomfortable and unhappy. That is what an enemy is. Now this body, not conquered by you, makes you unhappy, uncomfortable, and makes you suffer and miserable. So that is the enemy. Same rule applies to mind. Atma means mind. Utpathasthitat. The mind should be wise. It should have proper qualities like Shanti, Danti, etc. And it should have samatvam, the sameness, equanimity. That is an important quality that the mind should acquire. And instead of doing all that, the mind divides things. It is the pastime of the mind, an ignorant mind, to divide and oppose. First you divide, then you oppose. Unless you divide, you cannot oppose. First you divide. Divide based on the caste. Then why you can oppose one caste against the other. Caste, creed, race, religion, whatever you name it, it is there to divide. So mind divides and then opposes. So that is the utpatha, the wrong path for the mind. And when the mind remains in the wrong path, it is divided into the opposites, it sees only the opposites, and it is caught in the attachment and aversion. When you see the pair of opposites, attachment for one and aversion for the other. So raga and dvesha. When the mind is caught in these opposites, that is the mind which has gone astray. Utpathasthitat. Gone astray. And that is your enemy. Dear Hiranyakashipu, you have two enemies, your body and your mind. In the case of Hiranyakashipu, body doesn't apply because his body is quite strong. He has put it in good shape. All austerities and all that. His problem is his mind. The asuras are very healthy fellows, strong, but mind is all wrong. Therefore, your mind is your enemy. There is no other enemy. What a beautiful message it is. If you say, I don't have enemies, God bless you. But if you say, I do have enemies, yes, you have enemy. Not enemies, enemy. That is your mind. Very clean. Tadhi yanantasya mahatsamarpahanam. Greatest worship of Ishvara. You see this? You look at this. Anantasya samarhanam. Ananta is the infinite, Ishvara. Samarhanam, the great puja. Arhanam is puja. Samarhanam. The great puja of infinite Ishvara. You know what is that? Samatvam. That indeed is the greatest worship. You don't have friends and foes. Everything is divinity. That is the greatest worship. You don't. That is the greatest worship. So people think that worship means just to do some ritual and retain the ragadvesha. Even that is a worship, a kind of preliminary worship. But this is the supreme worship. And the preliminary worship should help us to reach here. If it is not helping us to reach here, then it is not doing any service to us. We have to conclude that way. Unfortunate. Anyway, this is the greatest worship of Ishvara. Then, one more beautiful verse. Dasyun pura shanna vijitya lumpataha. Lumpataha manyanta eke svajita disho dasha. Jitatmano jnasya samasya dehinam sadho swamoha prabhavah kutah pare. So we are concluding with this verse. I will still explain the verse. So before I forget, I am noting it down. So on 13 September 2012. So you see, Hiranyakashipu was boasting that I have killed all enemies. I have conquered all enemies, like Indra, Varuna, etc. In this world, I have conquered all enemies. In the other world, in heaven, I have conquered all enemies. He also says, I have conquered the 10 directions. Disho Dasha. Means, all the 8 directions on the earth, means all enemies on the earth are conquered, and all the enemies above, they are the Devaloka. All of them are conquered, and Patala Loka, Netherlands, all the enemies there also conquered. That is the idea of Disho Dasha. Means, I am the supreme, I have conquered everybody. Like Hitler, Adolf Hitler. Hiranyakashipu was like that. And so he is boasting, I have conquered all. What do you think of me? So, Prahlada is saying a little sarcastically, AK, some people claim that they have conquered the 10 directions. Disho Dasha. You should not say 10 quarters. 4 quarters only. So 10 directions. So Dishaha generally translated as quarters, but you should not say quarters because there are 10. So 10 directions they Swajita, they have conquered. That is how they boast. But before conquering others, you should conquer the enemies that are lingering inside. They are in you. They are constantly robbing you. They are destroying you from within. So they give an example of the termites. The wooden door outwardly, as they have put some beautiful shining cover to that, so decollum cover. But inside, the termites don't taste decollum. They don't want plastic. Bhagavan's creation only they eat. So they enter inside the door and the decollum looks like that, the same it looks. But inside they create their colonies and the entire door is eaten away. The Kama, Krodha, these are the 6 enemies which are inside. They are like that. They are like termites in the heart. They will be eating away the person's Shanti, Sukham, Jnanam, all his wealth, inner wealth, they will be eating away. He is busy, outwardly looking great. He is busy accumulating things of the world. And he thinks that I have conquered this, I have conquered this, that, I have accomplished this, I have accomplished that. Like that. So they are very boasting, self-aggrandizing and all that. Inside, the inner enemies are eating away at his vitals of life and wisdom. So they are like the termites. These are the inner enemies. And then there is another example given. This is this creature, a caterpillar-like thing, which sits on the leaf. It just sits there. You don't even see it moving. But it is constantly at work with its tiny tiny teeth, two of them, constantly at work. And the next day you come and see this leaf is all eaten and it is already sitting on another leaf. That is the caterpillar sitting on the leaf. These enemies are like that. They are sitting in the heart. They are eating away the heart constantly. First, take care of those enemies in you. Dasyun pura. Pura very first. Shat dasyun. Dasyu is a robber. They are the robbers. They rob your comfort, your peace, your shanti. Peace is shanti. Your punyam they rob. Your health they rob. And then your chance to gain the knowledge of the self, that they rob. Your general sense of welfare, that they rob. Everything they rob from the person. They sit inside and rob. They are the six enemies. They are kama, desire, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, moha, infatuation, mada, egoity, matsarya, jealousy. These are the six enemies, six robbers. First, think of conquering them. So, when you conquer them, you have conquered everything. And that will take you to the moksha. Like that, Prahlada is advising Hiranyakashipu. So, we will take up this story and also this teaching further. So, I thank you very much for your hospitality all these days and also for your kind attention during the classes. So, I thank every one of you. I am not telling the names. So, God bless all of you. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.